And I'll turn my microphone on so you can hear me. Before we get started with the meeting proper, I would like to welcome our newest member of the board, Justin Morris. Justin is coming on in the position that was created when Mr. Schwing resigned from the board. And also I would like to recognize and welcome Mark McManus. Mark is the Community Planning Liaison Officer for NAS Jacksonville, and he is a standing member of this commission, a non-voting member of this commission, and we have had him or his counterpart attend meetings in the past, and he will be doing a presentation today later on in the meeting. I need to ask our board members, do any of you have any conflicts of interest concerning this case?
No.
Thank you. I don't either. Has anyone had any ex parte communication with anyone concerning this case?
No.
No? Okay, good. Nobody here. So with that, we will get started with the meeting. This is a public hearing, and we are the Putnam County Planning Commission. We're the designated local planning agency for the county as prescribed in Chapter 163 of the Florida statutes, and we function under the authority of Articles 11 and 12 of the Putnam County Land Development Code. The primary responsibility of the commission is to serve as an advisory body to hear and make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on matters related to provisions of and proposed amendments to the Putnam County Comprehensive Plan and the Putnam County Land Development Code. The members of this board will review each application and make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners at their next regularly scheduled meeting on April 23, 2024. Procedurally, we will call each case by name and number. A member of staff will then briefly explain to us the nature of each request. We will then take comments from the applicant or their representative, followed by public comments concerning the request. We ask that all comments be directed to the board and not to anyone else in the audience. Before speaking, we will ask you to give your name and address and be recognized before you come forward. After all persons wishing to speak have been heard, we will entertain a motion from the board. This motion will be voted on by the board members and become our recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners will make the final determination regarding the application. I understand you're up today.
Yes, ma'am, I am. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Jennifer Casella for the record, Planner 2. The case we're hearing today is REZ 23-000008. The application is to amend the zoning map from Planned Unit Development and Agriculture to Residential Estate. The applicant is David Pepper. The subject property is all 224 acres of Hog Island, totaling 22 parcel ID numbers. The future land use is agriculture. The zoning is Planned Unit Development and Agriculture. The proposal is to amend the zoning map to allow development of a private luxury community. The purpose of the requested zoning map amendment is to rezone all 224 acres of Hog Island from Planned Unit Development and Agricultural to Residential Estate to allow for development of a private luxury residential community, which would be reviewed and processed as a platted subdivision dependent on the outcome of the subject request. Based on the supplied conceptual plan of what could be developed, the community could comprise a total of 22 single-family waterfront lots ranging from 5.9 to 14.6 acres. Lot sizes are subject to change when the plat is reviewed by the Development Review Committee. The island is currently encumbered by a PUD development agreement, Isle of St. John's Ordinance 1997-04, which expired 5 years after being approved in 1997, as no development occurred consistent with the phasing schedule of said development agreement. Additionally, the island is also encumbered by a platted subdivision, Hog Island subdivision, Map Book 4, page 108, in which the road and drainage improvements were not completed. An aerial view of the island. Zoning. Future land use. This is the conceptual subdivision that the applicant submitted to us. The residential estate zoning district is implemented traditionally for larger 1 acre or more, depending on the residential density, parcels located on navigable waterways, and to implement residential policies of the agricultural and rural residential use categories. The RE zoning district is compatible with the current future land use category assigned to Hog Island. The proposed rezone also provides an assured use that the lands on Hog Island can only be used for single-family residential development. Other lands on the island are zoned agriculture, which allows for development of mobile homes and several other uses subject to an approved special use permit. The subject zoning amendment proposal is an effective down zoning, which limits development to those compatible with the RE zoning district. The proposed zoning map amendment is compatible with the surrounding uses. Staff recommends approval of the request to amend the zoning map from planned unit development and agriculture to residential estate. Staff finds that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the adopted comprehensive plan and meets the locational requirements of the residential estate zoning district provided in the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan.
Are there any questions of Jennifer at this time? Yes, sir.
I have one. They're supposed to have, they've got these 22 sites. They range from 5.9 acres to 14 acres, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I thought that they were supposed to have 10-acre minimum.
Madam Chair, if I may cut in real quick, please. Can
Certainly.
we just confirm Mr. Hancock doesn't have ex parte or conflict of interest?
Do you have you? Okay, thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
What are the lot sizes required for residential estate in the agriculture zoning areas, or agricultural land use areas?
So this would be a down zoning from what's required now.
It's one dwelling per 10 acres, correct?
Right.
Okay.
So,
So if we're doing that for them, are we going to do it for everybody in Putnam County? I mean, that's the question I have.
Madam Chair, if I may answer that.
Sure.
So the residential density for the ag future land use is indeed one dwelling unit per 10 acres for platted subdivisions, but that is the total density for the development. So the property, the island itself comprises 224 acres. We would end up with 22 lots, which is a gross density of 1 unit per 10 acres.
so
One unit per 10 acres, and then
Right.
it's 1 unit per 5 acres if it abuts and takes access from a county-maintained road, and then
Right.
it's 1 unit per 20 acres when it's located in the military restriction overlay zone.
and this is in a military restricted overlay zone.
Portion of it is, yes, ma'am. And whenever it's a new platted subdivision, it stipulates that the gross density for the development be limited to 1 unit per 10 acres.
I don't remember when we did the comp plan that we ever talked about it being an average. I thought it was per site.
I thought it was too.
I believe that it's provided in the staff report, a snippet from that future land use element of the comprehensive plan.
Do we have a comp plan with us today that we can look it up?
Not immediately handy, but I can go fetch something real quick.
It'd be nice if we had that here,
Okay.
because there are a couple other questions that come up.
Okay. We'll be right back.
So you're saying that we use an average. Mr. Perry, do you have anything to weigh in on that?
No, ma'am, but I am interested to see what Mr. Baker's going to bring back for us.
This comp plan clearly said 1 per 10.
That's what I want.
So, okay. Any other questions from the board?
The only other question I had was, I thought that when you did a development, that you had to have water treatment facility and water facility, and not individual wells on each property.
That's going to be an exception to the comp plan, too.
Right.
Well, the lot size is, but subdivisions are required to have sewer treatment, aren't they, and central
No.
water?
No, they're
Okay.
not.
If you want a small lot size, you do it.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions one about the soil. The soil has been defined as not absorbable, the soil type. Is that suitable soil for a septic system?
I can't answer that. That would be like a Department of Health, when they had to go for their permits to get the sewers and, or the septic system installed, that would be Department of Health that would issue those permits and say whether they could be built or not.
That would come through also DRC.
Correct.
DOH would be there.
Yes.
It seems to me that that soil type is not going to be compatible with percolation with the septic system.
I can't say one way or the other if it would. That would be a DRC review.
Also, there appears to be a drive that goes from the north to the south part of the island. Is that on a causeway because it goes over wetlands?
I'm sorry, what do you mean a drive?
There looks to be a road. Can you
There-
bring up can you bring the island, the map of the island up? Okay, no, back one.
This is their
Okay.
conceptual plan that they submitted, and they do not at this time have any plans for a road. Each lot would be accessed by boat.
So there's no way, there's only going to be one marina, right?
I'm not sure that there's any plans for a marina.
I thought there was going to be a dock where 22
Maybe
boats
defer
could...
to the applicant or the applicant's agent for,
Yeah, that's on the other side. We'll get you in just a minute, Mr. Douglas. Thank you, though.
there are right now, I believe, 2 docks on the island, but I would imagine, and this is just speculation on my behalf, that every house would have a dock or plans to have a dock.
Okay. Question with that. It looks to be the highland, the upland areas, with one exception, or 2 maybe, do not come down to the river's edge. There's a substantial area of wetland between the upland areas and the river. What is our setback requirement for wetlands?
I believe it's 25 feet.
Okay. Is that taken into consideration here?
Development Review Committee.
Okay. Now, there's a PUD in existence right now for the island.
Yes, ma'am. Some of
Do we
it.
have to formally vacate that PUD?
Not if this is passed.
And how about the subdivision? We don't have to vacate that either? It's going to go away?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it would be vacated.
I have got a question.
Pardon? Yes, sir.
I've got a question.
But would you
Y'all call this a conceptual plan. If we approve the zoning change, that doesn't necessarily lock this plan in, correct?
No, sir.
That just-
Well, now, wait a minute. This is a subdivision plan, isn't it?
No, it's not. We are not here today to approve their conceptual subdivision plan. That would be a plat that's going to be submitted to DRC, and at that point, that's when those approvals from all the state agencies and the building department.
I thought, because I have to sign subdivision plans.
We are here today to approve or deny, or give your recommendation on the zoning change, not the subdivision.
So this is
So-
just one possible configuration, right?
Correct.
So this will come back to us to approve the subdivision?
No, This would go to DRC after here. We are here today to make a decision, or for you to make a recommendation on the approval or denial of the rezoning. After that, then it goes to the BOCC. They give their final say. If they approve, then we go to DRC. At that point, that's when plats start getting looked over.
All right, let me ask a question of Jenny. You've had me sign plats in the past where we've platted a subdivision. And it's been done after we've approved. It'll come back to the Planning Commission again? Okay,
After DRC.
okay.
Yes,
To approve the final configuration?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, right now, we're looking at the zoning change to residential estate.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about the different layers of flood zone areas that are on the island, and just define those for us?
Did I include?
There are two different categories, I believe I read. It's on page 8. Thank you.
One dwelling per unit.
That's what I thought. It just doesn't say anything about averages, does it?
We can do clustering, I think is the term they use.
It's not, if the law doesn't say you can, you can't.
So where's the military zone?
Oh, the overlay zone is the whole island. We're going to have the military man speak in just a minute.
On the last page, the density of transport.
So it would be the transfer. And that needs to be more clearly defined in here. Excuse us while we dot our i's and cross our t's.
It's all special flood hazard AE.
Okay, what is that exactly? Is that 500-year, 100-year?
I think it's 100 year.
We have AE and NWI, wetland layer, AE flood zone, and NWI wetland layer. What exactly does that mean?
The wetlands show, the wetland layer is going to show where the wetlands are exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And the flood zone is going to show where the flood zones are.
Now,
The AE is the flood zone with established elevation. The AE zone is a flood zone that does not have established elevation.
okay,
The X zone is obviously the stuff outside, and that's in the 100-year.
you're right, thank you. This doesn't take into consideration any projections that we're seeing with tidal changes, we're seeing with storm surge inundation. Those are all, Northeast Florida Regional Council has done a lot of study on that. That's something that may need to be looked at, because with tidal change, with surge, those areas are impacted. Just a cautionary word there. I think what we found out that yes, indeed, the agriculture category is a density of 1 unit per 10 acres. But the future land use element of the comprehensive plan does also allow for residential transfer zones, where residential density may be transferred from one lot, parcel, or tract of land to another upon approval by the BOCC pursuant to requirements of this section. The sending zones from which residential density may be transferred shall be those areas within the military restricted overlay zone. The receiving zones or areas to which residential density may be transferred shall be areas served by central water and/or sewer utility within the designated MROZ surrounding the Lake George Range and Rodman Range of the Pine Castle Military Range Complex. That needs to be reflected in the staff report, if you can do that, because that does impact what can happen with this. The receiving area must have central water and/or sewer. Shall be served. So was that taken into consideration when you all did this work?
No, ma'am.
Would not that be something that would be vital to this report?
Well, I think the reason it was not considered was we were merely looking at the fact of whether or not we could rezone the property to residential estate. All of the lots on the island currently, the 22 parcels, are existing. They're considered lots of record. So we could have just left the existing lot layout as is, and because they're lots of record, they would be entitled to development as is. The applicants are wanting to subdivide the island so that it's more of a proportionate layout of parcels. As it stands right now, you have one parcel is like 0.9 acres, the other one's 177 acres. So with the redivision of land, we would have more of an average 4.5, 5 acre parcel.
The original subdivision, or the PUD that's in place right now, was done under the old comp plan.
The current parcels that are on the island right now are lots of record.
Right, and that was all done previously under the prior comp plan, because the comp plan did change in this area.
The subdivision was platted before there were any regulations for
Right.
density.
I agree.
Right.
So therefore, if we're going to look at this to approve it, we have to go by what the comp plan says today. I mean, if
Sure.
you're going to build a house in the 70s, you don't have to do the codes that you have to have now.
Sure, but what the comp plan says today is that lots that predate the comprehensive plan December 19th, 1991 are considered lots of record and are eligible for a building permit.
But isn't that plat being vacated with this change?
No, ma'am. That would come after the zoning determination. They're not going to pursue a plat until they find out if they can get the zoning that they're looking for.
Seems like one is pretty much contingent upon the other.
Right, but they don't need to replat. I mean, they could just leave it as residential estate if they got the zoning
Exactly.
and build what they have.
Exactly.
But wouldn't they fall under the current comp plan?
What do you mean?
No, because it was approved prior.
Right. That's right.
Prior. But they've got to meet the needs of the current comp plan in order to do it.
If they're going to replat, then they would need to meet the needs, and that's where
Correct.
we would implement the residential transfer zones. But
Okay.
that would be up to the applicants if they wanted to pursue this central water.
Okay?
I'm confused that we want to approve rezoning to residential estate, which requires much larger lots than are currently platted. But we're not taking into consideration the underlying comp plan requirements.
Well,
They should go together.
we really can't consider the underlying comp plan because we don't know if the applicants are going to move forward with a subdivision or if they're going to just keep the lots as are. The intention has been to re-subdivide, but we don't have an application for that. They, frankly, and the applicant will probably agree to me,
How
they
many
didn't want to
current
spend the money on a plat until they figured out if they were going to get the rezone.
So in effect, they're wanting this proposal, they have 22 parcels there now.
That's correct.
And then they'll have the ability to make fewer parcels with the replat?
Be
The
same.
replat goes to 22, right?
But that's not guaranteed, so the
I think it's 18.
the effect is,
Basically what they're,
the effect could just be it's zoned differently, but they still can develop all the lots that are there now. Is that correct?
Well, they can't develop all of the lots there now because the PUD is null and void. So there,
22.
you can't do any development at this point in time.
okay?
So we needed to remove the PUD, and then if the applicants desire to move forward, then they would submit a plat and replat the island for a total number of lots that's equal to the existing number of lots currently there.
Which is 22,
Correct.
okay? Any other questions of the board, of staff?
I would like to say one thing. So when staff recommends approval, it's not in accordance with the comprehensive plan. Period. It's either is written and it's not, correct? If you're recommending approval, I can accept that, but it's not in accordance with the comprehensive plan.
Based off of the way that I'm reading the comprehensive plan, I believe that it is, but I don't feel that we need to debate that.
Okay, that's fine.
That documentation does need to be in staff report, how you came to believe that this should be approved.
Understood.
That needs to be in the staff report, especially the part about the density. And anything else, the
Water treatment?
water treatment, the sewer system, the whole 9 yards needs to be addressed in here. The other thing is, I think it would be really good and behoove you to put a timeline of activities in here, or at least a succession. What happens first, what happens next, what happens after that? Because we're at the starting gate right now, and they've got several laps to make around the track before they get to their final ideal situation. This is just step one. What is step two? What's step three? What's step four? I think that would be very good to have in this document and to have been presented to us for this. Anything else?
Well, Drayton Island's basically the same thing.
Drayton Island is.
How many lots is on that one? I have no idea. There was a lot of people around that island.
A lot more than this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Well, I
grandfathered in.
understand that, but just, to me, that, this island here is basically like Drayton, the same thing.
Very, very much, yes.
Right, and I think the water and sewer issue falls on the developer anyway, down the road.
But it is included in the comp plan,
Right.
so.
I don't think it would be practical with an amount of wetlands there to run lines there.
Yeah, the majority of the island falls within the wetlands. Is that correct?
Based on the NWI mapping, that is correct, but we haven't received a delineation for those wetlands.
Are we premature here today?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So right now, from what we know, the majority of the island is wetland.
We don't know that. The NWI wetlands map is just a layer that looks at elevation of land. It doesn't look at actual wetland habitat
So when will we know that?
whenever they submit a subdivision plat.
Okay. All right. Sorry for all of this back and forth. We were a little bit confused up here. At this point, before I bring the applicant up, I would like to bring Mr. McManus up. He has some things he would like to share with us based on the military overlay zones and the military's position on this, because those of us that live in South Putnam got a real taste of what happens with low-flying jets about a week and a half ago. We had a really sharp sonic boom. It was more than it was a bad one. So, Mr. McManus, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Through the chair, first, for the record, that was the Air Force, not the Navy. I don't take responsibility for
And
that.
please give us your name and address.
Mark McManus, P.O. Box 2, Naval Air Station, Jacksonville, Florida, 32212. As I said, my name is Mark McManus, and I'm the military representative to the Putnam County Planning Commission. In this role, I'm an ex officio, non-voting member of the Planning Commission pursuant to Florida Statute 163.3175. I'm here today to express the Navy's position on the proposed rezoning and development of Hog Island. I also brought with me Mr. Don Heaton. He is the Range Director for Pine Castle. So if you have any questions about Pine Castle or Lake George Range, he is the subject matter expert on it. The position of the Navy is we strenuously object to any rezoning or development on Hog Island for health, safety, and welfare reasons for our military air crews as well as the residents of Putnam County. Before you in a folder, you have multiple exhibits. The first is a definition of range compatibility zones and a guideline, a stoplight chart, if you will, that shows what the recommended development is in the different compatibility zones, and I will explain that. Second, you have a map of the range compatibility zones that clearly indicates that range compatibility zone 2 and 3 overlay all of Lake George to include Hog Island. Third, I've included Putnam County Zoning Code Section 45, TAC 163, a copy of the warranty deed for Hog Island by Runaway Island LLC, Google Earth and Putnam County Property Appraiser GIS historical imagery of the helicopter pad on the island, a copy of Florida Statute Title 25, Section 330.30, a portion of the FAA VFR sectional for restricted area 2907 over Hog Island, and finally, the court finding for Virgilio versus Ryland Group ruling of 2012, and I will speak to each of these. Hog Island falls within Range Compatibility Zone 2, which is the area of armed overflight when an aircraft commits to an attack run over to the Lake George Range. This is the period where the aircraft puts the master arm switch in on, the weapon is energized, the weapons rack is energized. The only thing keeping the aircraft from the weapon from departing the aircraft is the pilot pushing the button. This is right over Hog Island. You can find the definition, as I said, in Exhibit 1. In Exhibit 2, it shows what the compatible use, what the Navy's recommendations for development in Range Compatibility Zone 2. You will see that single-family residences, duplex, mobile homes, multifamily residential, transient lodging, public assembly is all considered incompatible. The Navy does not want people living underneath armed weapons. The Navy and other DoD activities depend on the Pine Castle Range Complex to prepare for war and support the nation's national defense strategy. Any development within RZZ-2 may affect the ability of the U.S. Armed Forces to complete our training mission. For this reason, we oppose the application to rezone or allow any residential development on Hog Island. Furthermore, I have 5 items I'd like to state for the record. First, as the Navy strenuously objects to the development inside Range Compatibility Zone 2, if Putnam County elects to approve this development, Putnam County will be assuming some of the responsibility if there is ever a mishap. If Putnam County approves houses to be built on here, knowing the risk, the responsibility is shared. As the Navy strenuously objects to this development, noise complaints resulting from Hog Island will be forwarded to Putnam County Administrator and ask them to respond. So once again, as the Navy has strenuously objected to it, we feel the responsibility for noise complaints is shared. Now, moving on to Putnam County Zoning Code 45, TAC 163, Exhibit 3. It states, a special use permit for private aircraft landing facility may be granted contingent upon the applicant obtaining all necessary state and federal permits for the facility. This island has been under the current ownership since February and March of 2013 per the warranty deeds when they consolidated the properties. Imagery obtained from Google Earth, as well as the Putnam County Planning Commission, clearly indicate that construction on this helicopter pad commenced in 2014 under current ownership. The Putnam County Planning staff has confirmed to me personally that no special use permit was ever issued for this helicopter pad. Per Florida Statute 330.30, FDOT is required to approve all heliports, and FDOT has no record of any application for a heliport in this location. This location lies inside Restricted Area 2907, which is special use airspace codified in federal law, 14 CFR Part 73. The FAA has designated the Navy as the airspace control authority for this area, and neither the FAA nor the Navy has ever been asked to approve a helicopter pad in this location. The Navy, as the airspace control authority for the restricted area, does not recommend the development of any aviation capability to this island, to include land-based planes, seaplanes, or helicopters. As this pad is in violation of county, state, and federal guidelines, the Navy requests the Putnam County enforce code compliance on this pad and have it either brought in compliance or eliminated. Per Florida real estate law, the seller is responsible for latent defects. In the Virgilio versus Ryland Homes ruling, which you have a case study of, the court found that when the seller of the home knows of facts materially affecting the value of the property, which are not readily observable and are not known to the buyer, the seller is under duty to disclose this to the buyer. In the Virgilio case, the location and operations of Pine Castle were specific to this case, and they were not disclosed to the buyers. We wish to enter into the record that the owner is responsible for disclosing to any future buyers that armed aircraft will be flying over these homes both day and night at low level while conducting weapons drops onto the Lake George range, as well as air combat maneuvering over Lake George and inside restricted area 2907. And that is the same area where the Air Force had their sonic boom. Finally, the development is located 18 miles from the Pine Castle impact area, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. This is a range where live ordnance up to 2,000 pounds is routinely employed. Low altitude flight and detonation of live ordnance can be heard and felt in this location of this proposed development. Therefore, per the Virgilio ruling, the owners must disclose this fact to potential buyers, as it is documented that some individuals who suffer from medical issues may be triggered by loud noises and tremors from the use of explosives and military equipment. So once again, the Navy strenuously objects to the development and rezoning. The information that I provided for you comes from the Range Air Installation Compatible Use Zone, which is the operations manual conducted under the National Environmental Protection Act framework. It pulls together the operations of the range, and then it looks to extrapolate how those operations will impact both the air, noise, and dangers to the people that live outside the range. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Are any questions for Mr. McManus?
No, sir.
Anybody else? You're thinking down there, Justin.
Yeah, how do you reconcile that objection with the rest of the residentially zoned property inside those areas that's already?
Every airport, there's development inside the range compatibility zone for Pine Castle. I was just down at Lake County. They have high density residential in the RCZ2 leading into the Pine Castle impact area. I can't speak to what was done previously. As was brought up earlier, comp plans change. The Navy's guidance, this is from 2017, has been updated. It's not necessarily incorporated into Putnam County zoning. We extend the offer. But there are lots of areas where housing was developed prior to engagement by the Navy or updates of comp plans and zoning codes that have resulted in, for example, Drayton Island is exactly in the same position as Hog Island. But once again, as this has come up, this is the opinion of the Navy, sir.
Okay.
So we address things as they come up and as questions come, or as applications come in, is when we address them.
Yes. I can't speak to what was done previously.
I follow that, but what we're doing here today is determining not whether or not stuff can be built on Hog Island, because there's already parcels there that have the ability to be developed. It's whether or not we're going to reconfigure those
And rezone it.
and through a rezoning process. So
Right.
it's not like we're saying yes or no, we're going to develop the island. We're saying
But
how, if it does get developed, it will be developed.
I agree with what you're saying, but based on what he's saying, is they should not even issue building permits. That goes to the building and zoning.
I got that part, but that's not what we're talking about.
That's right.
We're talking about zoning.
What we're doing is making a determination of not whether or not it's going to be developed, but how we're going to proceed forward if, in fact, it does get developed.
We're determining whether or not to recommend rezoning of these parcels. That's what we're doing.
Yep.
But we have to take everything into consideration when we do it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. McManus.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anybody else have a question? Mr. Perry? Okay. Zach, or Jennifer, do you want to ask any questions of Mr. McManus? Okay. At this point, I will ask the owner or the owner's applicant, whomever has been drawn the short straw, to come up and speak to us. Please state your name and address and talk to us.
Madam Chair, my name is Charlie Douglas, 117 North 2nd Street, Palatka, Florida. Members of the board, thank you for allowing us to be here. We fully support the thorough analysis of the staff and would request that you approve their recommendation. I would like to take a moment and answer any questions that you have, but first to answer some of the issues that came up from the representative of the Navy. First and foremost, the owner is very respectful of the Navy. Thank you for everything that the Navy does and keeping us safe. But there are some things that need to be cleared up, and one is about the helipad, and the PowerPoint presentation that was constructed by the Navy is a little bit misleading, because in that presentation it makes it look like the helipad did not appear until 2014, but the helipad was there long before, and it even predated the PUD in 1997. If you look at the original PUD on page 12, it references the existing helipad. The helipad's been there from the very beginning. And if there are any FAA regulations to bring the helipad into further compliance, of course, we will follow all federal, state, local law. But there is a big difference in the regulations that were cited for airports and those for helipads. And the issues of helipads specifically were not added in your packet. Also, the FAA restricted area 2907, I want to make sure that the commission is very clear on this. Hog Island does not exist inside of a no-fly zone. There are FAA zones for no-fly zones. These are called prohibited areas. The closest prohibited area to the north is around St. Mary's, Georgia, with the nuclear submarines. The closest prohibited area to the south is Kissimmee with Disney World. There is not a no-fly zone over Drayton Island, over Hog Island. It is a restricted area and an MOA, and flight is allowed for any aircraft through that area with certain permissions, and many times the restricted areas are not even live, and you can fly through without getting permission if the restricted areas are cold, which a lot of times they are. Also, it sounds like that the position of the Navy is that there ought not to be any residential development for Hog Island, and if that is the case, that's a taking. And that impedes on our clients' constitutional private property rights, and just compensation would need to be paid. I don't know if that is the track that the Navy wants to go, but if they're here to say that no development at all can exist on Hog Island, then that's a larger constitutional issue that we can cross the bridge later. And then the case of Virgilio is not applicable to today's conversation. We are a long way away from marketing any of these lots to be sold, and of course, our clients are going to follow whatever the law requires of them in marketing and what is a latent defect or not obvious defect and what has to be disclosed, not disclosed. They're going to follow the rules on that, and that's many, to use your earlier analogy, many laps around before we got to that point. But we're coming out of the gate today at the very first step, and it's only a discussion about zoning. And right now, had the PUD continue forward, it would be a much higher density. This is a down zoning. This is something that is going to elevate our community. Putnam County is going to be proud of what our clients are looking to do down there, and for visitors who are coming up from the south into Putnam County, this is going to be a great, something really nice to look at. And those who are coming south before they leave Putnam County will see what a beautiful luxury neighborhood this is. It's going to increase the tax value of Putnam County. It's going to help with ad valorem, and it's going to do a whole lot more than what the island is right now, which is pretty much staying dormant. But we're going to activate the island. It's going to look really good. It's something that the citizens of Putnam County are going to be proud of, and that the government will be thankful for the additional tax revenue. The other questions that came up are great questions about soil percolation, setbacks, the plat and the flood zone. All those things are important, and that will come at one of those future laps around the track with the development review. All we're here right now is on the zoning from the Ag PUD over to RE.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Douglas?
Yes. My question is the location at 121 Georgetown Landing Road. How big is that parcel? Because you say you're going to have 22 boats and parking for cars. You're going to have parking for cars because people can't get to the island unless they're going to get Drayton Island Ferry to stop over at Hog Island. So,
Yes, sir.
and it don't look like you're going to put any roads on Hog Island at the moment.
Yes, sir, and that will be a request that comes before the Planning Commission soon, because it is, the land side is currently zoned agriculture. We're going to need to rezone.
How big is that? Because it wasn't really,
Acreage?
where the sign was,
It's-
what I was told where the sign was, that was a county-owned piece of property,
You know,
where they put the sign at the end of Georgetown Landing Road.
That
I
must
was
have been a
told that was
misconception.
a,
But we will be back before you on that particular parcel.
Okay.
But it is large enough to accommodate.
I was just worried about the
use.
neighbors too now. You got neighbors on the mainland side, and then we got the Navy on the other side, so.
Yes, sir. And I assure you, based on the commission meeting from January, where the zoning went from ag to commercial to accommodate a Dollar General, we will not be asking for a Dollar General on the island or on the land side. It will only be a zoning request from ag to RE as well.
Okay. I was just curious about
Or
how big
what-
that property was.
And I should also hasten to add that, or whatever zoning is required for the function of allowing that to go, the residents to go back and forth. RE might not be the best designation there.
Right.
Maybe some other, a light commercial, if that, it may not even be that, but I assure you it would not be a Dollar General.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Douglas? Mr. McManus, do you have any questions? Mr. Perry? Okay, thank you very much. Is the owner present, or are you representing the owner totally?
Sure. If you would, mind stand up.
Would you
Mr.
like to come
David,
speak?
David Pepper and Mr. Cliff Pepper. And I'm not sure if you've met the Peppers yet, but they also are developing the dry storage boat area in East Palatka, and who are folks from out of town but have a long history in Putnam County, and with Mr. Pepper's children learning to water ski in this area of the St. Johns River, and we're proud to have folks like him choose to invest and be part of the economic development of our county.
Okay. I do have one more question to Mr. Douglas, but come on forward, Mr. Piper. Go ahead. Pepper? What responsibilities will the county have regarding fire safety, health and safety, evacuation of somebody who is ill, emergency services, basically?
Thank you very much for that question, and that's another reason why the helipad is essential, is for our public safety component of that and the residents there.
Well, the county doesn't have a helicopter.
Or for Life Flight, who would be coming in and need to
Yes, it would be
medically
Life
evacuate.
Flight.
Yes, ma'am. But the services there will be all part of the level of service is something that is considered in the development review. But yes, the residents who live out there would know that any type of medical services could be delayed because of the necessity of ferry access.
What about firefighting?
Same thing, yes, sir.
And there was a parcel or a residence that was severely damaged by fire in 2023? Was the county able to get over to help fight that fire?
Yes.
Okay.
What the,
Come on, you can speak from the microphone.
my name is David Pepper. I live at 340 Oak Ridge Trail in St. Augustine. Answering your question, yes, they came over. What they have is they have a small boat, and it actually has a pump attached to it. And we have a fire wagon for the island, and we have some fire stuff there. But they came over with that, and it's got a, fairly large Honda engine, and they just, and flood it. So actually, they were very, very quick, to be honest with you, and very efficient.
And they were able to get to the structure with the hoses that they had?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
But They're used to that. They have to be prepared for everybody on Drayton Island where the heavier density of the population is
Correct.
there. But I've owned the island for, since 13, and I'm sure y'all all know how it all shook down. There was a big auction and all that kind of stuff happened, and nobody showed up but me. So, and then it was broken to all these pieces. So all I did is I bought the two ends and then had to connect it. And when I bought it, everything was 3 years behind in taxes. So the tax collector was right there to get their tax money as we bought it, which is proper and, the right thing to do. But we bought the island. The reason I bought the island is because I've had a house down there for a long time in Lake George, prior to the 213. My children are 18 years old now, identical twin girls, but they grew up tubing and water skiing on that backside of Hog Island. You know where it is there? And in fact, just recently, we had the power company there, and I don't know if y'all are aware, the power company just within the last 30 days ran in brand new power there. So we have power there now for over 50 homes of good-sized houses. And so
Is there a
no-
substation, is there a substation on the island, or?
No, it comes from Drayton Island.
Okay.
So the power company is thinking they're going to sell a lot of power there. We did not ask them to do that. They came and they did it on their own. It took them 2 years to get the permits, to get the cable over there. And, they did a good job. And just finished it up. If y'all have been boating in there, you've seen the barges and all sitting down there. But the island, I've always gone by it. And when we would go by there, you couldn't see the houses. You couldn't see anything on the island. It was so grown up. And then when a chance came to get it, we got the island and we started piecing it together. In fact, I think I was the first person to own the whole island in 50 years. And, there's all kinds of stories to the island. We had somebody who was a psychic to the stars that was the last person to sell to us, that lived on a yacht and so forth. But we got the island, and I just fell in love with it. We have the best wildlife over there. We all come up, we see all the wildlife. We're very, very much wildlife orientated. We're kind of tree huggers, actually. And but we rebuilt the houses, got them going again, got the docks operational. So the docks that were there, we didn't build any new docks. We just utilized what was there, and did it. It's turned out nice. We've had multi-family daughter-father campouts with other families there. It's a great place to be there, and it is a hidden jewel. It's something that needs to be shared with people, and people need to know about it. In fact, the reason why we have built the boat barn, the big facility over on 17, is that the water, the river, is the biggest, best thing you've got around here. It is a unused jewel. You talk to most of the people in St. Augustine, they've never even been over here. They've never been to the river.
It's one of our best resources, I will agree.
That's
Yes.
what we're trying to capitalize on. That's
Okay. Are there questions of Mr. Pepper?
Yes, I got one. On the, I think it was the southeast island, part of the island, there's a dock there that's all by itself. Is somebody living there? There was a boat there when I went by with a boat the other day.
I can tell you the sad story there. That house was built, and a gentleman had it, and he had cancer, and he died. And so we bought it from his estate.
Okay.
But
I know it was
when you
way
see
out
a
there
boat
by
there-
itself compared to where your main compound was.
Yeah.
I just happened to notice that.
but we're on the island maintaining it all the time. We're mowing it, we have to, everything from blowing the roofs off to keeping it up.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions of Mr. Pepper? Gentlemen, I thank you. Please stay around because we may have more questions later on.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, I will open it up for public hearing. I have one speaker card. You're not required to have a speaker card, but after you speak, if you'd fill one out, that would be great. But the first person I have is Jerry Wilson. And Jerry, come forward, please, and give us your name and address and share your concerns, thoughts, and
Hello, my name is Jerry Wilson. Legal name is Jermaine Wilson. And we recently purchased 103 Georgetown Landing Road. And so when we heard this, of course we have concerns. One of my
you're going to need to speak close into
Oh,
that
sorry.
microphone.
I'm
It's a
sorry.
little finicky.
Okay. I normally speak pretty loud, so I didn't want to get too close. So one of the concerns, of course, is for us, I mean, I'd love to see the development of the island. That would be nice. But for everybody around here is the infrastructure. I am from a small town south of Daytona. It used to be small. And, the infrastructure was not put in. Matter of fact, we just came back from Bike Week, and it's just, it's not good when you don't plan. So I'm thankful that, I don't want to say Joe, I want to say Mr. I can't.
Mr.
pronounce
Froelich.
it. Froelich, thank
You
you.
can call me Joey, it's no big deal.
So I'm thankful that you brought up the ferry, because there's been rumors about that. And that's part of the infrastructure of this, this development. So it's like, how is this going to affect the property owners that are on the river? My property is on the river, and it is actually right next door to Mr. Pepper's property at the end of Georgetown Landing Road. We also have two other neighbors here with us. My husband's here with me as well. But we're, concerned about that. I mean, it's a very quiet area, one of the reasons we're here. And, it's very concerning. What are they going to do about the infrastructure? How are they going to control the extra cars going back and forth, et cetera, et cetera? And how's that going to affect everybody around here? It's, if you've been down to Idle a while in Georgetown, you know what I'm talking about? You see how quiet it is until they have their little things going on Sunday. But, that's all part of the fun. They're quiet at night. Everything's, it's very nice. It's very quiet down there. Not a lot of traffic. And it's one of the reasons we are here. So, that is one of the things I was really concerned about. I think one of my other questions was answered about anybody living on Hog Island. I wasn't sure if they were, but they're living there now. And they're getting back and forth, I'm sure, with their own boats.
Right.
Unless they have their own ferry. So those are my concerns. How is it going to affect us, especially with the extra traffic, with the extra, even the property is not that large right next to us. It's, I think, the riverfront frontage is maybe 100 feet, maybe 200, I don't remember. I think it's 100. But it's still not that large. We're going to have a lot of cars parked over there. That's our concerns. And, and I do love development. I love the idea of somebody's going to have a wonderful place to live. That's great. But it needs to be thought out and how it's going to affect everybody else.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please come forward and give us your name and address.
Good afternoon. My name is Judith York. I live at 142 Drayton Island Road. I'm a resident for 24 years. The experience I have with Mr. Pepper is that he has done tremendous improvement for this county and for southern Putnam County. Every project he does it very thoroughly, and he certainly has the finances to do so. I've watched Hog Island for years be dormant, be overgrown, be looted with poachers. It was always a place to go. Other people, fishermen, they would go hang out. It provided a lot of opportunity for people to enjoy the fishing and hunting. obviously on private property, not being governed by anybody. Mr. Pepper has stepped forward and has developed it, has cleaned it up. He's also invested in the historical schoolhouse for Georgetown. That's a historical landmark that should be designated. This man has put a lot of time and effort. He's moving forward of trying to take a piece of property that Putnam County has, it's all encompassed in Putnam County. And he's trying to give it an opportunity for some kind of growth where other people can either put their home on it or choose not to. He's offering 22 lots. That doesn't mean you're going to have a huge subdivision. Georgetown has, back when I first got there, 500 residents. I don't know how many more are in there. You've got all along the river, you've got now homes that are going for $1 million. I stood up here in defense of development or lack of development when somebody wanted to come into the fish camp. And they wanted to put in the villas. They wanted to put in 3-story condominiums. And we got together and we fought. That was wrong for that community. What Mr. Pepper wants to do is correct for the community, for that little segment. Anybody who buys a lot and chooses to build on that island, that is not going to be some cheap $50,000 home. I guarantee you it's probably going to be assessed for $500,000 at least. That's a big ticket for your taxes. Somebody who can afford that is also going to care about how they get from point A to point B.
Well, we
Right.
thank you. We thank you very much for bringing those
So
things forward.
I think that is something that you need to consider, and I agree that it should be rezoned.
Thank you. I appreciate your coming forward. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please come forward and state your name and address.
My name's Karen Harvey Borg. I live at 119 Georgetown Landing Road. It's exactly beside Mr. Pepper's property. And my concern is that he also has the piece of property adjacent to that all the way to the river. So he's connected 2 pieces of property so he could have riverfront access. He uses the property beside me for all his maintenance for Hog Island, people in and out. They have enough room to park. But if he gets 20 houses over there, or 22, whatever it is, he's going to try to use that property for those people to park their vehicles, their boat trailers. That's a lot of extra traffic on Georgetown Landing. There is no parking on either side of Georgetown Landing. When Idlewild has a big party, which they do, they don't have enough parking either. So there's vehicles on both sides of Georgetown Landing, everywhere they can park. Neighbors have been putting fences up to try to keep people from parking in their yards. That's fine. But 22 more houses, how many more vehicles are going to be able to work on that road? If they can squeeze them on that piece of property, I don't see how it's going to happen. So somebody needs to look at that for
Thank you.
extra parking.
Thank you, ma'am.
Because all those people have boats and vehicles. They have to be somewhere back and forth.
We thank you very much for coming forward.
So that's my concern.
And what was your last name again?
It's just your form. Sorry.
What was your last name?
Borg, B-O-R-G-H.
Okay.
And would you turn that in to this lady here, ma'am?
Yes.
Would you turn your
Jennifer,
blue
Jenny
card?
needs your sheet, your blue sheet.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. And Ms. York, if you do want to, you're doing that right now. Is there anyone else who would like to speak either for or against this development or this rezoning application? Hearing none, I'm going to bring it back to the board and close the public hearing portion of the meeting. At this point, we will entertain discussion, motion, and a vote.
I have a question for the judge. How you doing, sir?
Yes, sir.
I know what the Navy said about liability You know, there's going to be a mishap. There's not a doubt. There always will be at some point. We hope there's not. My question is, I don't think the county should sign up for a mishap. So is there anything that you can do to put a restriction in the deed where the county can't be sued that they sign? I don't know. I'm asking this question.
Sir, that would have to be something that we'd have to sit down with the county attorney and with the county administrator and try and work something out. But, I mean, now is not the time for me to try and
Right.
voice any opinion on that.
Okay.
I'm sorry I can't help you further, but
Okay.
I have the same question, because if we recommend to the Board of County Commissioners approval for this, we in fact are also recommending that the Board of County Commissioners assume responsibility, as the Navy is saying they will no longer assume total responsibility. Am I reading that right, Mr.
well,
McManus?
I'm sure my colleague, Mr. Douglas, will have something to say about that, but right off the top of my head, it's as far as who would be responsible for a mishap or whatever happened, considering that we're talking about something that hasn't happened yet or anything like that. Once again, I'm really unwilling to express an opinion as to who would be responsible for it or what can be done to lessen our responsibility. When I say the county.
Yes, and we did have a situation a week and a half ago where a military plane did cause damage in South Putnam because of the way it was being maneuvered. So, you know, whose responsibility is that? Is that the Florida Air National Guard? Does the county assume responsibility for that? I mean, South Putnam's been developed for years, so I don't see how that can be happening there. But there are opportunities there. So
If I may,
I'll recognize you, Mr. Douglas, if you would like to answer that question.
if I may, Madam Chair, I'm not the attorney for the Planning Commission or for the county, but I listened very closely because this is the first time I've ever heard the argument from the Navy that by a county taking an affirmative step toward a zoning that somehow you are signing up for joint liability. I'm not aware of any authority, legal authority, for this county to assume joint responsibility legally for any mishap of the Navy. And if you go back to the 2008 RACU's enabling letter from the Department of the Navy, there's no mention of joint responsibility. This whole idea of the Department of the Navy being part of an ex officio member is so that there can be harmony, and we believe that the request and the recommendation from the staff, down zoning from the PUD to the RE at a lesser density, brings us more into harmony with the Navy, not less. I'm not aware, again, your attorney can advise you of any authority whatsoever. I did not hear it from the Navy either, of how the county is signing up for joint and several liability for any mishaps of the Navy.
I'd like to ask Mr. McManus if he could address that from the federal legal whatever.
Ma'am, to the chair, I specifically use the word responsibility, not liability. When there is a mishap, for example, 2012, an F-18 Hornet took off out of Naval Air Station Oceana. Aircraft had an engine fire. The aircraft crashed into an apartment building. The apartment building was in what was known as Accident Potential Zone 2, which is similar to RCZ2. And the question was asked, why, to the Navy, how did this aircraft crash into the apartment building? The Navy's response was, well, they explained the situation and said that the Navy recommended against building apartments in this location for this specific reason. So that is the responsibility which I spoke of, is that if Putnam County is approving development in this area, knowing the risk, then I'm not implying financial liability. I'm just saying that Putnam County is acknowledging there is risk, and they're acknowledging that there is risk of building homes in this area.
May I briefly respond to that? There's a big distinction between the Oceana incident and what we're...
Okay, I don't want to get into a he said, she said. I think he gave that to us as information. I don't want to do a rebuttal kind of situation. We certainly understand the difference between what's going on down the St. Johns River, but I appreciate your willingness to come forward, and we may ask you to come back up if somebody wants to hear your answer.
Madam Chair, just to try and clarify a little bit, we live in a world where you can sue anybody for anything. And we're talking about a speculative matter, something that, could take many, many different forms. But I tend to agree with Mr. Douglas in his assessment in that there is no, and I don't know of any, case law that would make our county responsible for an incident. So in that vein, I hope that that's kind of explain it a little bit, but at the same time, a person who's been injured or feels like they've been injured, they can take whatever steps they want. But as far as would I be worried about it? No.
I think the builders and the homeowners of Putnam County take risks every day through our building department, building in flood zones, but that doesn't stop them from developing in flood zones. It doesn't fall to the county to be liable or have.
No, but the county doesn't approve building plans in flood zones either.
Susan,
Well, some flood zones.
I'd like to make a statement. In South Putnam, I don't know if people realize, Embry-Riddle University out of Daytona flies over us all
the
day
time.
long. There's probably 10, 12 planes at a time
Right.
flying over, and that's a risk.
Yep, there are a lot, well,
They have
Commercial
landed at
airline.
Skinner's Nursery with a plane.
commercial aircraft fly over there all the time,
Yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah. See them.
But I think what I'm hearing from Mr. McManus is that there is a linkage between the Navy not assuming full responsibility for damages if the county goes ahead and acknowledges this risk. So is that sort of what you're thinking, saying?
Reluctant to use the word damages because that's implying a lawsuit, which I'm not speculating.
Okay.
All I'm saying is Putnam County must acknowledge the risk.
Right. So in approving this, we're recommending that Putnam County acknowledge a risk.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay.
Can I ask Mr. McManus a question, Madam
You
Chair?
certainly may.
So what is your opinion on the 22 lots that are currently there? I mean, if we were,
Presently, there's 3 buildings on the island.
right,
What was zoned prior, I can't speak to. All I can convey is the Navy's recommendations based on the compatible use guidelines, which I provided, which the Navy recommends not building homes underneath the flight path of aircraft flying with ordnance.
so as I read this, you only would support a golf course, a riding stable, or water recreation, livestock farming, and, well, then it says agriculture except livestock, mining, forestry, fishing, and wilderness.
It's a matter of population density in the area of risk, but yes, ma'am, that is the recommendations based on the study from 2017, was the developmental guidelines.
And was this same recommendation in place in 2013 when Mr. Pepper bought this property?
I don't know, ma'am. This study came out in 2017. That was before my time in the job. I know there was a prior, if I can ask, Mr. Heaton, are you aware of the prior RACUS date? No? Okay. So I can't speak to before 2017, ma'am.
And I think that is something that was omitted unintentionally from the 2020 comp plan.
Okay.
So that was something that didn't get in, it should have probably. That might be something, Zach, to look at for an amendment to the comp plan, to further define the relationship between the military overlay and what we're doing in Putnam County. Any other questions?
I have a question for Zach, Madam Chair. Zach, so the 22 lots that are there currently, you couldn't issue a building permit because the PUD they're part of the PUD mostly, and the PUD is,
It's expired.
is expired. That's the word I'm looking for, thank you.
For the most part, that is correct. There are 3 parcels on that island that are ag zoned, and those currently right now could be issued a building permit.
So what would have to happen for you to issue a building permit on the lots as they are in the 22? Do you have to abandon the PUD?
Yes, ma'am, that PUD that's null and void is restricting the other 19 lots from being eligible for development. Plus, of course, the 2 existing homes. One was destroyed in the fire that we discussed earlier.
Okay. So is that an administrative thing, or is that something to abandon a PUD? I'm just curious.
No, ma'am, the only way to abandon a
Is
PUD
come
is
through
to
here.
rezone it to something different.
Okay.
What would it take to make the PUD active? And,
That was something that was explored by the applicants before we got to this point. Unfortunately, we wouldn't support a revitalization of the PUD because of the density and the military restriction overlay zone. I mean, that PUD would have allowed for, I want to say it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 193 total residential units, and a 1 acre size community center, 45,000 square foot community center. So that's something that we could never support.
So
I
he's,
guess the next question would be, is there any sort of case law or something that if that was to be litigated, we could be forced to adhere to those lots?
I don't believe so, no, sir. I don't know if there's any case law, but the development agreement for that PUD said specifically that if the phasing schedule was not complete within 5 years of approval, then that was it. So,
And when that gets voided, was there a parcel diagram prior to the PUD that had that broken up into multiple pieces, or was it one piece that when the PUD expired, it all became basically one agricultural parcel again?
the development agreement did have a site plan laid out, and it would have required a replat of the Hog Island subdivision that was there. They never got that far. I think the first thing was to do a wetland delineation, and we don't have any records of what occurred after the PUD was approved by the BOCC.
No, I'm asking what condition was Hog Island in prior to the application for the PUD?
Oh, it was platted with that subdivision, and there were the 3 homes were there. So the 3 homes predate the PUD from '97. The homes were erected in the '80s.
Under 3 parcels, or was it a single parcel with multiple homes on it?
There was multiple parcels.
Okay, so, and bear with me, in effect, if the PUD is no longer active, does the space on the island revert to the original way the parcels were split prior to the application for the PUD?
No, sir. The subdivision, the layout of the parcels is not associated with the PUD. So the PUD would have allowed for a certain number of uses, but it then also required a replat of the subdivision on the island. So they're not in any way connected. The current layout, the prior layout, and the defunct PUD.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to see how you can have a PUD that is not valid, and then how you divide the parcels up. If you say the PUD expired, so you revert to a configuration of parcels, or you have an existing set of parcel divisions.
You have to create a new one.
So land.
So you're left with, and where I'm going with this is if you have a PUD that's not valid, and you have previous parcels that you're not going to adhere to, how do you get to how does the landowner
anything with
say,
it, right.
what can I do with this property? You won't let me develop the PUD, you don't let me revert to the original parcel dimensions. You're basically telling me I can't use my property.
That's
So
exactly
that's where I'm at.
That's exactly the scenario that the applicants have found themselves in. So In order to develop the land, you would only be able to develop based on what the zoning district allows for. The zoning district, aside from the 3 ag zone parcels on the island, is PUD. That PUD has expired and is null and void. So they can't develop.
So the
that
22
land.
parcels that are there now are not valid parcels, they're parcels of the PUD?
No, sir, there are valid parcels.
Okay,
They
all
do
right.
exist. It's just the zoning that encumbers them prevents any development. It'd be very similar as if you approached us and you wanted to build a home on a commercial zone property. We'd say you can't do that unless you rezone to residential.
Okay, I got you.
I see Mr. Kennedy standing at the platform, or at the podium. Would you like to address us and tell us who you are first?
Patrick Kennedy, my address, 673 3rd Avenue, Willaca. And I'm here on behalf of the applicants as well. Just trying to maybe shortcut some of the discussion here. Your own code provides how you deal with expired PUDs in section 45-800. If it's expired PUD and there is an expiration date within the PUD, to answer one of your earlier questions, you cannot revive that PUD except in compliance with today's comprehensive plan. So that answers that question. The other is with the PUD, if the county determines it's null and void, it actually provides that the county should actually be rezoning it to something, either its prior zoning category or something consistent with what's in the area. So this rezoning is actually mandated by your own code. Our applicants actually are doing it. There's no reason for the county to pick it up unless someone's interested, so I get that part of it. But technically, this has to happen. Okay?
Something has to happen
Something has to happen.
rezone this property, you're right.
And something has to happen that's consistent, as far as the zoning category goes, with your ag future land use. Ag zoning and RE zoning are both consistent with your ag future land use. And I just want to touch on one topic earlier stated, and we'll get into this when the plating comes. But it's pretty emphatic law in your comp plan. You look at the definition of density versus lot size. Density is not lot size. Those are being confused early.
Right.
Density is how many houses per acre. Each one of those can be a different lot size as long as the average density does not exceed 1 unit per 10 acres. You could technically have a 1 acre lot and a 20 acre lot, and you're not exceeding density if it's a 1 unit per 10 acres on a 22 acre
Right.
lot. Or 21 acre lot.
But that needs to be clearly delineated, so it makes sense.
You have to kind of work through it to get there, but that is how your comp plan currently reads.
There are
So
a
we
lot of
have to do
pieces.
something today, or something soon, I guess. And
Yeah.
the RE zoning is actually a lesser zoning that they're asking for than probably, I think if staff was doing this on its own, I would presuppose they would probably choose the ag zoning because it's what's typical under ag future land use. It's what's predominant on Drayton Island. It's also what the other non-PUD lots or PUD lots are zoned. So they're actually asking you guys to do something a little lesser than it might have defaulted to otherwise. So I think we need to keep that in mind. And you're going to have an opportunity to review the development plan when it
But they're really
when
not
it comes.
asking for less because that's voided.
Yes, and the parcel question, I can answer that too. The parcels predate the PUD. So as your staff already advised you, it predates the comp plan, and so they're entitled to develop those 22 lots now. The configuration they're proposing is going to be better for addressing all the issues you spoke to, wetlands, flood hazard. The configuration's intentional based on the maps, which all be truthed with surveyors and things like that before any permits are pulled. So you're going to have a better project than what they could actually do today, and they could just, we want ag zoning, and we're going to do what these lots already allow. So they're asking to do something better. They're asking permission to do something better than what they could do today. So I just like you to keep that in mind as you're deliberating,
So you're telling us you'll be back.
if I have to.
All right, Zach.
Zach, can I ask you one other question?
Yes, sir.
This will come back in front of us if we approve for the rezoning, correct?
If you approve the rezoning and they move forward on their subdivision, yes, sir, it will come back to you.
In the subdivision form.
And excuse me?
In the subdivision, we'll see the subdivision. We'll see
That's
the
correct.
actual plats.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
At this point, is there any further discussion among the board? At that point,
I have one more question for Zach. I'm sorry.
That's all right, go ahead.
Zach, do you concur with what Mr. Kennedy just said, that basically we have to do something?
So his point that he made, where if the county determines the PUD is null and void, then it's the county's responsibility to fix that. I was unaware of that. It could be true. I've not read that in our code, but that doesn't mean it's not there. We have 1,200 different articles of code, and I don't remember all of them.
I think the bottom line there is we often go in and where we see an expired PUD, the county will go in, and we did that in the comp plan. We did change land use designation on several parcels because what they were intended to be had expired and they were incompatible with current use. And the county did make those determinations, and technically, if this were a dormant island and the owner had died and nobody had come forth to buy it and it was overgrown and everything else, and PUD sitting there, the county could come back in a review and say, we got to do something about this. This is not good. And there are thousands of parcels across the county that have incompatible uses on them and are sitting there screaming to have attention. And this is one of them.
It's also worth noting, too, that a county-initiated rezone rather than an applicant or a property owner-initiated rezone, if we did it, it'd be much more arduous and difficult, and the notification requirements are greater. I mean, it's a longer, drawn-out, intense process than if
It's
an
not fun.
applicant comes to us and says, this is what we would like to do.
Right. It's always better to have an applicant come forward and want to do something that has possibilities. All right. I know a lot of us have questions. We've heard from the audience. We've heard from the applicant. We've heard from the applicant's agents. We've heard from the Navy discussing the Department of Defense recommendations. But here we sit as a citizen board tasked with making recommendations to the county commission on all applications that come before planning and zoning that aren't special use permits or ZBOA stuff. They get some of the fun too.
Yeah.
I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I recommend to approve rezoning REZ 2300008.
And why do you recommend that, Mr. Hodge? We have to
I
say.
believe there's some safeguards between this vote and the end product.
Okay, we got to talk about the comp plan and the land development code in there. Does it, you got a little splurb there.
You should support, you got it.
Consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Putnam County Comprehensive Plan. I'm sorry.
This is for the rezoning.
For the rezoning. Yes, approve the rezoning.
I second it.
Okay, Mr. Morris has seconded. Do I have any further discussion? All those, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Justin?
Aye.
Just give me a minute. Mr. Hancock?
Aye for the rezoning, I guess.
Mr. Froelich?
Aye.
Stanley? I know that, but you got to vote. I'll vote aye for the rezoning. But I have serious concerns about the project going forward. I will make that statement just so I'm above board and to the public. You all have answered questions. You've given us your opinions. I can't thank Mr. McManus enough for being here. You've clarified immensely a lot of questions that many of us have had over the years. We would love to have you attend our meetings more regularly. They get rather lively. I wish you had been with us during the revision of the comprehensive plan. When we get to the point when they bring the land development code revisions back to us, please come.
Yes, ma'am, I will.
You're notified every time of a meeting, aren't you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
When, ma'am, Mr. Baker does a great job of when an issue comes up that the Navy may have interest in or has equity, then he reaches out to me and makes sure I'm aware of it.
Does Mr. McManus get our agendas every month, regardless of whether it has something to do with the Navy? As an ex officio member of the board, he should.
If he'd like them.
No, ma'am. We've been sending him only those items that are either like communication towers that would have effect in the FA.
I'm going to ask from this position that going forward, anything coming before the Planning Commission, a copy of the agenda be emailed to Mr. McManus. At the same time, it's emailed to the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Because he's an ex officio member of this board. He's not just somebody representing the Navy. He is on this board. So we need to get him information. And we will be working on that land development code, I sincerely hope soon. Do we have any update on? I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, this will go on to the Board of County Commissioners at their meeting on April 23rd, 2024. They will go through the same process that we have gone through today, and they will take, input from people from the audience. They will listen to the agent and applicant. They will ask questions just like we have. The staff will make their presentation, and it'll be the same process all over again, but we're recommending approval at this point. So that's what's going to happen next on April 23rd. Okay, I appreciate those of you who live in Georgetown having come today. These aren't fun meetings sometimes, but when you exercise your civic responsibility and stand up and share your concerns, share your accolades, it makes a huge difference for us. I can't tell you the number of times we have sat here to an empty audience. Literally. Those chairs have been empty. And having you here and having the applicant here and the applicant's agents has been wonderful, and especially having our military representatives here. So I thank you all for coming, and I appreciate it. You're welcome to leave at this point. We're just going to do a couple minor housekeeping chores. We've got to approve the minutes from our February meeting, and we're going to hear a report from staff about where we stand with the comprehensive, or the land development code revisions. So,
Madam Chair, I've got to leave.
Mr. Hodge, you may leave. Mr. Hafner would have left already. But seriously, thank you very much for being here, and we'll move on to old business. Is there any old business other than the Land Development Code to come before the board? Let's talk about the Land Development Code. Where are we?
Staff is eagerly awaiting a proposal from our consultant. We have been deadlined a couple times.
You've been what?
Deadlined. They've pushed back the deadline a few times.
Yeah.
We're hoping to have received something this week.
Will you be then sharing that with this board as you receive it?
So the first motion that we go through is we're going to send it to planning, zoning staff as well as public works, and allow those staff members to make their suggestions, requests. It'll then go back to the consultant, and then it'll come forward to planning commission and.
All right, we will be going through it on a very detailed way, won't we?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I mean, whenever we approach with those revisions, you'll have the entire
Because
through underline.
we may make some revisions also coming from the citizens' perspective. Because we did the comp plan line by line in this chamber.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
And I just wanted to highlight too, it's unfortunately not the comprehensive rewrite that we have been hoping for. It is a rewrite to allow us to align with statutory requirements and correct some of the errors within the land development code.
now, what was the RFP? What was the deliverable from the consultant?
What are you asking?
I'm asking, was the consultant tasked with doing a comprehensive revision?
No, ma'am.
Great. Okay. Any questions of Zach on that?
I got a comment.
Take it.
I want to tell Zach, y'all did a good job after looking at all of it. I get it.
Thank you, sir.
Just saying.
Yep.
Yep, I've got questions, but I agree. But I would like to see a little bit more specificity when we get to the next one. And talking about the wetlands, talking about the densities.
I'm sure the St. John's Water Management will have something to say too.
Absolutely.
Oh, I can't wait. Well, that's going to DRC before it comes back to
Yeah.
us.
That's correct.
So DRC is where you all need to be present too, Mr. Military guys. They need to be invited to that. All right, I need to get the minutes approved. Do I have any,
To approve the minutes of our last meeting.
I'll second.
any discussion? Hearing none, call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Chair votes aye.
What do we got for next month? Anything?
Yeah.
Well, you're not sure yet.
We do have applications that we're working. There are 3. One is a rezone up in Bostwick area. It's C3 to C4. I think a minor subdivision plat is going to come before you all. I'm
Is that
sure
a
I'm
trailer
missing
park?
some. What's that?
Is that a trailer?
No,
Mobile
but
home area?
But we will have a PUD for a kind of a funky new lot lease type of community.
Lot lease kind of community, like a mobile home facility.
Yes, ma'am.
Gotcha. Okay.
And this is where? Boston?
No, so the subdivision replat is going to be Lewis Brower Road for the Dollar General we just recently did.
Yeah.
The lot lease community is in San Mateo.
Okay.
Okay.
And what's the C3 to C4 in Boston?
C3 to C4 would allow for mobile home sales.
That's exactly right.
I'm sorry?
Yep.
Yep,
I was expecting that.
yep.
So that's 3 cases.
Yes, that I can recall. I'm fairly certain that's the only 3 that we're anticipating for April 10th.
Okey-dokey. We'll be back. Second.
I won't debate that today.
Take your time. We'll debate it then, huh?
Can we go home?
You may go home. This meeting is adjourned. It's 5:39.